Hello, I'd like to just show everyone something I found at a thrift store. So, this is a Sony FD Mavica floppy disk digital camera. This one specifically from 2001. I've seen these in other videos, other places online. Seems like something that would be nice to have. Nice to get if you find it at a thrift store, since it's a bit more of a self-contained sort of entity. So, first things first, let's take a look at this unit itself I found. So it's just this raw camera here. Seems to have most of the stock stickers still on it. Visibly, there's not a ton of damage to it. It's just minor wear and tear. There is a name tag at the bottom here. I guess whoever Falk was owned it before. We opened up the battery compartment. It didn't come with the battery, which was a bit of a concern for me. So that's something else I have to buy. So I wound up buying this for $15.81 is the price that Goodwill listed it for. Yeah, Goodwill these days, I mean, they're not really even a thrift. They're like a corporation, I believe. Yeah, they just went for like $10 off eBay prices. I kind of begrudgingly still went for it. It's just something I thought would be cool to get at a thrift type store, secondhand store at some point. If I don't find one now, might not find one in the future. Yeah, it still has the stock lens cap. I guess head strap. I actually am not a camera person. Don't know what that's called, but since it's attached to the camera, it still exists attached on the camera. So in order to use this camera, I had to get some replacement batteries. Now, you can Google the name of this camera specifically. My model is MVC FD75. Search for batteries for that, but then you get more expensive results, at least on Amazon. What I did is I Googled the camera itself. Then it turned out one of the first links is Sony's own website, where they still have the manual. In there, they have the battery types listed, and I just searched for batteries of that type. I got these. I guess Artman is like the brand name, quote unquote, like an Amazon only brand name, that makes the replacement batteries for, I guess, a wide range of camcorders. So we'll see if these are pre-charged out of the factory, but decent little sized unit. This was the one with just a wall plug, not USB charger. I don't think I'll be using this that much, but we'll see. Yeah, what appeals to me about these cameras is that the medium it stores on is floppies, which I have right here, if I grab it. It's a USB floppy disk drive, so it's very accessible for modern computers. I have a few floppies sitting around. Using it as my webcam prop currently, so can't show the floppy, but I think most people know what they look like. So I guess as a quick dumb test, we'll slide this battery in. Alright, so that takes a decent push. Okay, and I guess we'll see if these are charged right out the factory. My guess is no. And okay. So we have no disk charged right out the gate. Let me try and put this right here so you can see the feed from the camera. So, camera works just fine. That's nice. If I try and go to the menu, possibly, to figure out how to use this camera. Turn flash on and off. I mean, it's a digital camera. This is like from 2001, so pretty modern in that regard. Don't know the specs. It looks like it's fully charged right out the factory, though. We got the battery notice now. So yeah, I guess the other moment of truth will be putting a floppy disk inside. So let me go ahead and grab one of those. Okay, so I'm back with this old yellow floppy disk. The camera will focus. It's been used once. I think the stuff that's on it, on the label here, is still on it, but it's getting overwritten. We'll see. Let me first take off the sticker so that we can access the floppy drive a little better. Might edit this out. Yeah, you can see the sticker was put right over the floppy entrance, which Alright, so I think I have this cleaned up as much as I want it cleaned. Let's go ahead and get our floppy disk. Not even formatted. Pop it in here, if I have it the right direction. Looks like it goes the other way. We'll power it on and just see if I can take a singular picture. Okay, so now it's saying the battery is alive still, actually. Yeah, no notice about the floppy disk, so I'm gonna just hit the button on the top here. Take a picture of the USB floppy disk drive, and there we go. It's recording, clicking away at that internal disk drive, and there's our photo. Let's switch to the play. So now we have file access, and here is our picture. The focus is not going to be the best way to show this. Might just show this on screen in post editing. Alright, but that's the quick first look at the camera. There should be some other things I want to do with this camera in this video. Something a little different to bring to the table, because otherwise these cameras are pretty easy to understand. You put a floppy in, they take a picture. I pop the floppy out using the eject switch. Okay, looks like it has to be on for you to eject. Oh, you gotta push this. There we go. Pops out. Would put this in the USB floppy reader and put this in my computer. Modern computer. Okay, now I have this disk open on my computer. You can see here, these are some pictures from later. This isn't the same photo, but any pictures taken by the camera are placed on the floppy. These files are all files that were on the disk before, so leaves all those files untouched, so you could use the floppy for multiple things if you wanted. So before I show some photos, I'd like to give a bit of background on this camera. The Mavica MVC-FD75 was, as mentioned before, released in 2001 for about $500 USD. It was the lowest end in a line of digital cameras released by Sony that year, and was able to take pictures in a 640 by 480 digital resolution with its 0.3 megapixel sensor. The camera was essentially a slightly updated MVC FD73 from 1999. So that information left me with a bit of a question. If this is rebadged technology from a few years back, was it still relevant? Or had flash storage and SD cards already taken over at this point? Was there a person that this camera was for? Well, that's what I would ask, except for the DP review article that I showed previously actually had a typo, which I only noticed when watching this back. The price of the Mavica FD75 was actually $400 as verified on another site, which makes my previous wondering obsolete and caused me to revise my script here. Before, I went into detail on how the $500 cameras at the time generally came with flash media and shot at a higher resolution. For example, at $500 USD, you could get your hands on the Toshiba PDR M81, a 4 megapixel camera that could save pictures at up to a 2400 by 1600 resolution. This camera came with an 8 megabyte smart media card, and it connected via USB to your PC to read said card, so no additional card reader was needed. However, at $400, the Mavica FD75 is an obvious tier below camera, and I also learned about the tier below this. According to a New York Times article, every sub-$300 camera about this time lacked many of the modern comforts that this $500 model did, such as the rechargeable battery and the what you see is what you get screen. So compared to those, this was a better first digital camera choice. As a side note, in terms of features, this camera also had a 10x optical zoom, which the contemporaries in the $500 tier I looked at did not have. The thing that I see in old user reviews was that this was often a choice for a first digital camera, citing the ease of sharing floppies around, since image upload sites were probably not as ubiquitous at this time. If this was your first digital camera, then you probably wouldn't understand what a bigger resolution for spending $100 more meant. I can also see people not wanting to bother with flash media, which would mean possibly getting some sort of front bay or USB card reader. The cards themselves would have cost a bit more floppies at this point as well. I was able to find an excerpt on a 64 megabyte smart media card costing $200 in February of 2001. So originally, to close out my history lesson here, I wanted to ask the question of whether this camera was relevant in the 2001 market. And while I guess that still is a question, it's not a strong one, since it seems to have a clear niche, instead of directly competing with higher-end cameras like I originally thought. I'd like to see your comments on whether this was your choice of a first digital camera, or were the higher and lower end options more on your radar? I'd love to see the relevance of these cameras back in the day. Okay, so now it's time for the most fun part. It's going to be a gallery of photos from this camera. I wanted to compare this camera to other digital cameras set to 480p, which are both my 2015 C920 webcam and my 2018 mid-range phone, the Sony XA2, which is coincidentally also a silver Sony device. This first set of photos features comparisons between all three of these cameras and are all indoor shots. You can see the pictures are noticeably grainier from the FD75, even compared to my C920, which I find grainy normally. You can also see the camera on my XA2 has a much wider FOV than either of the other two devices, just to make itself look that much better. The next set of photos I took outdoors, so I had to abandon the C920 webcam, and I took a fall photo shoot using just my phone and the FD Mavica. Here I got more intimate with the FD Mavica and have a few little notes on using it. I noticed it was hard to tell what was going on the screen when using it outside. It's not very visible. The zoom function is really good on this camera. It was a nice feature to see. Noticed walking around with the camera, leaving it on, it would eventually just turn itself off if you don't take pictures. So that was a sort of a nice little battery saving feature. As you take pictures, the camera does have a little indicator in the top right, and it will let you know when it gets full, so I knew to switch to my extra floppy. And I haven't mentioned it yet, but the camera does have a fine photo setting. I don't personally see too much of a difference between fine and normal photos on this camera. But if you do take a single one, F is appended to the file name, so you can separate it out if you want to mix and match. So after taking this camera out and looking at the results, I can say it is quite different than just taking a modern digital camera and setting the resolution down. It has a slight washed out grainy look to it, but it's not quite as aesthetic as things like still video cameras from the turn of the 80s. Even then, I still think this device does have a place in my collection of things. Looking at this purchase through the lens of a millennial buying an experience, I can say that it definitely was an experience, using kinda large physical media on a full camera that gives different photos to one that can take normally nowadays. I'd say the older Mavica floppy cameras are a more interesting collectible, both simply due to age and their different look to their still video frames. But this device still has some merit. It's a good excuse to use floppies long after they cease to have relevance. I do feel I overpaid slightly for it, while if I got one of the older Mavicas it would have been just fine, but it was still a fun experience to use. This concludes my quick look at the Sony Mavica FD75, where I showed both the slideshow and learned this camera's relevancy to both today and in the past. If you'd like to see me cover other old tech items I find, which would be in the future since this is the first time I've done so, or cover current tech items that I need, or review and talk about various gaming topics, hit the subscribe button to see this eclectic mix into your feed. I also once again invite anyone to comment if this camera was worth it back in the day, or even if you think it is now. And that's truly all for this video now. Thanks for watching, peace, and bye.